Eric Nolan noticed I wasn't invited to Jacob's graduation before I did. That was the embarrassing part. I had been sitting at Peter Kincaid's dining room table for almost 2 hours, surrounded by place cards, parking instructions, a spreadsheet that had somehow acquired 4 different colors, and enough graduation announcements to suggest Jacob was leaving for another continent instead of the University of Wisconsin. Peter stood at the kitchen counter, sleeves rolled to his elbows, trying to fit bottled water into a refrigerator that clearly had other plans. "Bottom shelf," I said. "I tried the bottom shelf." "You tried the left side." He looked over his shoulder. "There are sides now?" "Peter, you work in finance. That does not qualify me for advanced refrigeration." I got up, moved one container of cut fruit 6 inches to the right, and made room for the water. Peter stared at the shelf. "That feels judgmental." "It should." He smiled, and I had the ridiculous thought that I liked being in his kitchen. Not liked Peter's kitchen. Liked being in it. There was a difference I had been carefully not examining for approximately 11 months. The front door opened without a knock. "Jacob?" Peter called. Better dressed. Eric stepped into the hallway carrying 2 garment bags and a cardboard box. Peter's ex-husband was 45, broad-shouldered, silver beginning at both temples, and one of those men who could wear running shoes with expensive trousers without looking like he had dressed during a fire. He saw me and smiled. "Andrew." "Eric, you've been recruited." "Apparently." Peter came around the counter. "He volunteered." I looked at him. Eric looked at him. Peter frowned. "Why are you both doing that?" "I didn't volunteer," I said. "You said you could help." "That is a response to a request." Eric handed Peter the garment bags. "I see the divorce improved your listening skills." "Our divorce improved a lot of things." "That's true." There was no edge in it. That was one of the first things I had learned about Peter and Eric. They had been divorced for nearly 4 years, and whatever romantic wreckage had once existed between them seemed to have been dismantled carefully enough that Jacob didn't have to climb over it. Eric put the cardboard box on the table. "Programs. I thought the school was supplying those," Peter said. "They are. These are the dinner menus." Peter looked inside. "We have dinner menus? Your sister decided we needed them." "My sister is why civilization eventually collapses. She also found the restaurant." "That's fair." Eric began sorting stacks with me as naturally as if the 3 of us had been doing this for years. That happened sometimes. I would find myself inside some Kincaid-Nolan family operation and realize nobody had explained why I was there. Christmas drinks. Jacob's 18th birthday dinner. The night Peter's dishwasher flooded, and Eric showed up with towels while I arrived with a wet vacuum borrowed from my building manager. Once, when Jacob needed a last-minute ride home from a debate tournament, Peter had called me before remembering Eric was 15 minutes closer. At the time, it had felt flattering. Mostly it still did. Eric picked up the printed guest list. "Where's Andrew?" Peter didn't look up from the garment bags. "He's helping." Eric paused. That wasn't my question. Something in my stomach shifted. Peter finally looked over. "What?" "Where is Andrew sitting?" Peter glanced at me, then back at Eric. "With us, obviously." Eric checked the list again. "He's not on here." Peter took the paper from him. I laughed, because that seemed easier than anything else. "I'm a late addition." "You're not an addition," Peter said. The answer came fast enough that I felt it before I understood it. Eric did too. His eyes moved from Peter to me. Peter kept reading the list. Mom, Dad, Leah, Paul, Sophie, Eric, Marisol. "I believe you," I said. "No, you're supposed to be here. Apparently I'm spiritually attending." Eric covered his mouth, badly hiding a smile. Peter ignored both of us and walked to the table where his laptop was open. "I'll fix it." "It doesn't matter." "It matters if you don't have a seat. I can sit anywhere." Peter stopped typing. It was only a second, maybe less. But I knew him well enough to see when a sentence landed somewhere deeper than it was supposed to. Then he looked back at the screen. "You're sitting with us." Eric studied him again, not suspiciously, not possessively. That would have been simpler. Instead, he looked almost tired. Jacob came downstairs before anything else could happen. He was 18, tall like Peter, dark-haired like Eric, and currently dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt from a band none of the adults in the room recognized. He surveyed the table. "No." Peter looked at him. "No what?" "This." This is your graduation. This is a military campaign. We're organizing. You have assigned colors. That's Andrew. All three of them looked at me. I raised one hand. In my defense, the colors work. Jacob dropped into the chair beside mine. Please don't turn my graduation into a logistics summit. Eric pointed at Peter. Tell him, I'm being outnumbered in my own home. Jacob glanced at the guest list in Peter's hand. Did you finally put Andrew on it? The room went quiet for half a beat. I turned to him. You knew? Jacob shrugged. Dad asked me yesterday where he should put you. Peter closed his eyes. Jacob, what? You said you didn't care. I don't. Put him next to Grandma. She likes him more than she likes Uncle Paul. That is not difficult, Eric said. Peter gave him a look. Jacob leaned back. Can I go now? You haven't checked your speech. I know my own name, and the school's name. I'll survive. You are not giving a speech. Then I'm definitely ready. He disappeared upstairs again. Eric waited until the sound of Jacob's door closing reached us. Then he looked at Peter. Yesterday? Peter sighed. Don't. I haven't said anything. You have a face. So do you. Peter pointed toward the box. Menus. Eric started sorting again. I did too. For the next 20 minutes, nobody mentioned the guest list. That somehow made it worse. By the time I left Peter's house, I had convinced myself it was nothing. That was one of my better skills. I could take something emotionally inconvenient and reduce it to administrative error before most people finished feeling it. Peter had forgotten to put me on the list. Then he had corrected it. Normal. Jacob expected me there. That was nice. Eric had noticed. Slightly awkward, but survivable. Nothing required investigation. The problem was that the next morning, Peter behaved exactly as he always did. He was already in the conference room when I arrived for our 8:30 operations meeting, coffee beside his laptop, glasses low on his nose, while he reviewed quarterly staffing numbers. He looked up. You left the seating cards. Good morning to you too. Good morning. You left the seating cards. I thought I had been demoted from active service. You color-coded them. That doesn't make them my children. His mouth moved, like he was trying not to smile. Our coworkers began filing in. Peter slid a folder toward me. Training projections. I took it. Thank you. And before you say anything, I fixed the guest list. I wasn't going to say anything. That's usually when I should worry. The meeting started. For 45 minutes, Peter was simply Peter. Precise. Dry. Unreasonably good at noticing when a number didn't belong in a column. There was a version of him everyone at work knew. Dependable. Controlled. Difficult to surprise. I knew another version. The man who sang badly while cooking. The man who called his father every Sunday and complained about it every Monday. The man who hated folding fitted sheets so much that he once claimed they were evidence mathematics had failed humanity. The man whose son texted me photographs of Peter asleep on the sofa with captions like, "Your friend is old." Somewhere along the way, access had become intimacy. I just couldn't identify the moment it happened. After the meeting, Peter caught up with me near the elevators. Thursday. What about it? Jacob's school wants the family there early. There's a rehearsal issue. Can you come by afterward and help me finish the table cards? I looked at him. The answer was already in my mouth. Of course. That was what I said when Peter needed something. It was what I had been saying for nearly a year. Then I remembered Eric standing in Peter's dining room. Where's Andrew? He's helping. That wasn't my question. The elevator doors opened. Peter stepped inside, then realized I hadn't moved. He held the door with one hand. Andrew? I can come Thursday, he relaxed. But before I do, I need to ask you something. His expression changed. Not alarm. Attention. Real attention. The elevator tried to close against his arm. Peter stepped back into the hallway. Okay. People came out of conference rooms and crossed toward the elevators, carrying conversations past us without lowering their voices. I wished we were somewhere quieter. I also knew that if I postponed the question until somewhere quieter, I might find a reason not to ask it at all. Thursday, I said, when I come over. He nodded. Am I helping, or am I coming? Peter's brow tightened. I don't understand. I think you do. The elevator arrived again. Neither of us moved toward it. I'm always doing something when I'm with your family, I said. Driving someone. Fixing something. Picking something up. Helping Jacob with a presentation. Checking a reservation. Now, I'm doing graduation. You're good at those things. That is not helping your case. A couple of people from payroll passed us. Peter waited until they were gone. I didn't realize you felt used. I didn't say used. It sounds like used. No, used would be easier. That got through. I looked down the corridor, then back at him. I like helping you, Peter. That's part of the problem. He said nothing. I like Jacob. I like Eric. Your mother terrifies me, but I'm starting to think that's intentional. A reluctant smile appeared. I didn't let it rescue us. I just don't know if I'm there because you want me there, or because I'm useful once I'm there. Peter took off his glasses. He only did that when he needed more time than he wanted anyone to notice. You think I invite you because you're useful? I think you invite me without actually inviting me. That sentence makes no sense. It makes perfect sense to me. Andrew, I was not on the guest list. I forgot to add you. I know. I fixed it immediately. I know that too. Then why does it matter? Because I wanted it to matter. Because some irrational part of me had seen an empty line on a spreadsheet and felt it in my ribs. Instead I said, because you knew I'd be there before you decided where I belonged. Peter's eyes stayed on mine. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he looked away. It wasn't avoidance exactly. It was recognition. That scared me more. I need to think about that, he said. My first instinct was to make it easier for him. Tell him it was fine. Tell him I was being dramatic. Tell him I had slept badly and turned a seating chart into a referendum on our relationship. I didn't. Okay, his gaze returned to me. Are you still coming Thursday? I'll finish the cards I already agreed to do. Something tightened in his expression. That sounded contractual. It was supposed to. Andrew, I'm not angry. You sound angry. I'm uncomfortable. There's a difference. He looked like he wanted to argue. Then he stopped himself. Okay. It might have been the first time I had ever put a boundary between Peter and me, and watched him not immediately try to solve it. That should have felt satisfying. Instead, walking back to my office, I felt slightly sick. Thursday afternoon, Peter sent me a message. Don't come over tonight. I read it twice. Then a second message appeared. That sounded terrible. I mean, you don't need to help with anything. I finished the cards. A third followed. Can I call you? I answered, before he could send a fourth. What happened? Nothing happened. You're typing like someone under federal investigation. I was trying to respect your boundary. That is not supposed to cause this much punctuation. He exhaled. I finished everything. You finished the graduation setup? Everything I was asking you to do. Why? Because you were right. The answer came so simply that I had nothing prepared for it. Peter continued. I kept telling myself you liked helping, which is true. Yes. And because it was true, I stopped noticing that I was assuming. I sat back in my chair. I'm not asking you to never ask me for help. I know, Peter. I know. There was something different in the way he said it. Less defensive, more careful. Then he added, I would still like you to come tomorrow. I waited. He seemed to understand that the silence was his. To Jacob's graduation, he said, as my guest. My throat tightened. You don't have to set anything up. You don't have to check the restaurant. You don't have to make sure my father finds the correct parking garage, even though he absolutely will call me from the wrong one. That is statistically guaranteed. You can show up 5 minutes before we have to sit down if you want. That sounds reckless. I'm trying something new. I smiled despite myself. Then he said, I want you there. 4 words. Nothing elaborate. They landed harder than all the invitations Peter had never technically made. I'll come. He was quiet for a moment. Thank you. Don't thank me like I accepted a committee position. I'm adapting slowly. Clearly, that evening, after the graduation rehearsal and after Jacob had disappeared upstairs to practice doing absolutely nothing, Peter asked him to practice. Peter and I sat on the back steps of his townhouse with 2 bottles of sparkling water. No paperwork, no checklist, no problem to solve. It felt bizarre. Peter loosened his tie. I was married for 14 years. I turned toward him. It was not how I expected the conversation to begin. I'm aware. I know. I'm setting context. Finance people really know how to seduce a man. He gave me a dry look. Do you want to hear this? Yes. He looked out toward the small yard. Eric and I were good for a long time. I had never asked for details about the marriage. Peter had never volunteered many. We were good parents, he continued. Good at money, good at schedules, good at being the couple everyone assumed would never have a serious problem. What happened? Nothing dramatic. That answer surprised me. Peter rubbed the label on his bottle with his thumb. That was part of it. We stopped being curious about each other. We knew each other so well that we stopped asking anything. He gave a short laugh. I knew what Eric wanted for dinner. He knew when I needed 20 minutes alone after work. We could run a household without speaking. That sounds efficient. It was. He looked at me. It was also lonely. I didn't joke this time. The marriage looked correct long after it stopped feeling like a marriage, he said. We were still husbands because we had always been husbands. Neither of us wanted to be the one who turned uncertainty into a decision. And now you hate labels. I don't hate them. You distrust them. I distrust naming something before I know what it can actually hold. That made too much sense. Unfortunately, so did the opposite. I think I'm the reverse. Peter waited. I stared down at the bottle in my hands. My last relationship lasted 7 years. I know. He liked me best when I was easy. Peter frowned. That sounds worse than you usually make it sound. Because I usually make it funny. That was true enough that neither of us challenged it. I got along with his parents, his friends, his coworkers. I planned trips, remembered birthdays, fixed problems before they became conversations. Peter said quietly, "You made yourself useful. Very. And when we broke up, he told me I was the easiest person he'd ever been with." Peter's expression hardened. "That's cruel." "It wasn't meant cruelly. That doesn't improve it." "I know." I looked at him. The problem is, I realized he was right. I had spent years making myself easy to keep, without ever making anyone answer whether they actually wanted to keep me. Peter's eyes dropped for a moment. I knew exactly what he was thinking. "So when someone matters now," I said, "I tell myself that if I have to ask what I mean to them, I already have the answer." Peter was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That isn't fair." I almost laughed. "To me, or to you?" "Both." The honesty of it surprised me. He turned the bottle between his hands. "If I'm supposed to ask instead of assume, you probably have to do the same." I wanted to defend myself. I couldn't. That's inconvenient. I'm finding the whole conversation inconvenient. Good. Good. We sat there, while evening settled over the yard. No confession came. No sudden solution, just the uncomfortable realization that Peter was afraid of naming something that might later become false, while I was afraid of asking a question that might reveal something had never been true. Two opposite strategies, same result. Neither man risking enough to know what he was building. Peter finally stood. "Tomorrow will be chaotic." That sounds ominous. My mother will cry before 9. Certain. Eric will pretend he isn't crying. Also certain. Jacob will act like none of this matters, and then probably keep every card anyone gives him. I smiled. Peter held the door open. Then, before I stepped inside, he said, "Andrew?" I looked at him. I meant what I said. There were several things he could have been referring to. For once, I didn't choose the safest interpretation. I know. The next afternoon, I arrived at Jacob's graduation, with nothing in my hands. No envelopes, no backup charger, no printed directions, no emergency bottle of stain remover. For the first time since I had entered Peter Kincaid's private life, I had absolutely no job to do. And when Peter saw me across the crowded auditorium lobby, his entire face changed anyway. He smiled before he reached me. Not the polite version he used at work. Not the distracted one he gave people while mentally checking 3 other things. This one arrived all at once. "You came." I looked down at myself. That was the invitation. "I know. You seem surprised." "I'm not surprised. You look surprised." "I'm adjusting to saying what I mean. That could take years. Be patient." "I have been." The words came out more softly than I intended. For a second, the noise of the lobby seemed to move around us instead of through us. Peter's smile changed. Then Jacob appeared between 2 groups of students in blue graduation gowns. "Andrew." He hugged me, before I had time to decide whether that was something 18-year-old boys did voluntarily. Apparently this one did. "You brought nothing." I was specifically ordered not to. Jacob looked at his father. "Growth." Peter sighed. "I'm surrounded by critics." Eric joined us, carrying exactly 1 folded program. He glanced at my empty hands. "Excellent. You're all very invested in this. We've been waiting years for Peter to discover delegation is not intimacy." Peter stared at him. Eric shrugged. "Too soon?" "Yes. Fair. The ceremony itself was long in the way graduations were supposed to be long. Names, applause, a principal attempting humor, parents photographing every movement as if their children might vanish when they crossed the stage. I sat between Peter's mother and Peter. Nobody asked me to hold a bag. Nobody gave me a task. At first, I didn't know what to do with my hands. Then Jacob's row stood. Peter leaned forward. He didn't reach for me. He didn't make a joke. He simply looked nervous. I touched 2 fingers lightly against his forearm. He turned. "Breathe," I said. "That advice feels patronizing." "You're welcome." Jacob's name was called. Peter stood with everyone else. So did I. Jacob crossed the stage, shook the principal's hand, accepted the folder that probably contained absolutely nothing yet, and glanced toward our section. His grin widened. Peter clapped so hard his watch slid down his wrist. Eric shouted something completely undignified. Peter's mother cried exactly when Peter had predicted she would. For several seconds, I watched Peter instead of Jacob. Pride changed him. It softened the parts he usually held in place. When he sat again, his eyes were wet. I pretended not to notice. He noticed me pretending. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" He looked toward the stage. "For coming." This time, I didn't make him explain the distinction. After the ceremony came photographs. Peter with Jacob, Eric with Jacob. Peter and Eric with Jacob. Grandparents, aunts, cousins, people I had met twice and somehow remembered. At one point, Peter's sister Leah waved me toward the group. "Andrew, get in here." I almost did automatically. Then I saw Jacob looking at me. Not expectant, just checking. I asked, "You want me in this one?" Jacob rolled his eyes. "Yes. You're the only person here who helped me practice my scholarship interview without saying the phrase, 'Just be yourself.' That is because it's terrible advice." "Exactly." I stepped into the picture. Nobody rearranged themselves dramatically. Nobody announced anything. Peter stood beside me. His shoulder touched mine. That was all. It was enough. Dinner afterward was noisy and warm, and exactly as overorganized as Jacob had feared. I remained astonishingly unemployed. Peter's father asked me about work. Leah tried to recruit me for a charity auction in September. Jacob opened cards and made a spreadsheet joke that clearly came from Peter. Eric spent 10 minutes arguing with Peter about whether Jacob's dorm required an actual desk lamp. At some point, Peter leaned toward me. "You okay?" I looked around the table. "Yes." "You're quiet." "I'm experiencing a historic lack of responsibility." "How does it feel?" "Suspicious." He smiled. "Stay with it." By the time everyone left, it was nearly 10. I helped no one carry anything. This required discipline. Peter walked me outside. The restaurant parking lot was nearly empty, warm air carrying the distant smell of rain from somewhere north of the city. For a moment, neither of us moved toward our cars. Peter put his hands in his pockets. Today was good. It was. Jacob seemed happy. He was. "My mother likes you more than she likes Paul." I was informed. "That's dangerous. I plan to abuse my influence." Peter laughed. Then the laughter faded. He looked at me with the expression I had learned to fear, because it usually meant he was trying to decide the safest possible version of something. "Andrew." "No." He blinked. "I haven't said anything." "I know. That seems unfair." "Probably." I took a breath. My heart was beating much too hard for a parking lot conversation. But I knew myself. If I let Peter construct this sentence carefully enough, I would spend another month analyzing every word. So I interrupted the pattern. "Do you want to date me?" He stared at me. There it was. The question I had spent nearly a year believing I should never have to ask. It felt terrible. Then, unexpectedly, it felt clean. Peter's mouth opened. Closed. I waited. Not forever. Just long enough to let the answer belong to him. Yes. The word was quiet. Certain. I swallowed. Yes, as in you've thought about it? Yes. Yes, as in tonight, made you emotional? No. Good. His eyes narrowed slightly. Are you going to interrogate me through the entire romance? If there is a romance. Andrew. I'm serious. So am I. He stepped closer. I have been thinking about you for months. That surprised me. Months? Yes. How many? He looked offended. I am not giving you a quarterly report. Coward. I started noticing it around Christmas. That was 5 months ago. I'm aware how calendars work. I stared at him. All those dinners, all those errands, all those times I had wondered whether closeness meant anything. Some of it had, not all of it, but some. Peter continued. I kept telling myself I needed to know exactly what I was offering before I said anything. And I kept telling myself, if you wanted me, you would say something without being asked. Excellent system. Flawless. He smiled. Then I said, I don't want to keep doing that. Neither do I. I want to date you. Peter's expression softened. Then date me. That sounded like an order. I'm bad at this. I know. He took another step. Close enough now that neither of us could pretend the conversation was abstract. His gaze dropped briefly to my mouth, then returned to my eyes. No performance. No question disguised as a joke. I moved first. The kiss was not dramatic. That was what I remembered most clearly afterward. Peter's hand settled lightly against my side. Mine caught at the front of his jacket. He kissed me once, pulled back, just enough to look at me, then kissed me again, because apparently confirmation was useful in some situations. When we separated, I laughed. Peter looked suspicious. What? I spent months expecting that to be more complicated. It probably will be. That's reassuring. I'm trying honesty. You may need practice. He smiled. So what do we do now? It was such a Peter question that I nearly answered with a plan. Instead I said, dinner next week. A date? A date. No graduation materials? None. No family errands? Absolutely none. Tuesday? Tuesday. For the next 2 weeks, dating Peter was disturbingly easy. We went to dinner. We walked around Lake Harriet. He came to my apartment and discovered I owned exactly one pan he considered usable. I learned he watched terrible renovation shows while claiming to hate them. At work, we stayed professional enough that nobody had reason to care what happened after 5. Outside work, we stopped pretending our attention was accidental. Peter reached for my hand once while we waited to cross Hennepin Avenue. I took it. No audience, no revelation, just a choice. And then, very gradually, our dates began acquiring extra purposes. Tuesday dinner became dinner after helping Jacob compare dorm bedding. Saturday morning became breakfast before a storage unit run. A quiet evening at Peter's became 3 hours reviewing financial aid forms Jacob had already completed correctly. None of it bothered me enough to name. Not at first. I liked Jacob. I liked being useful. I liked Peter. Those truths made the pattern easy to excuse. Then one evening, Peter opened his calendar while we were eating Thai food at his kitchen counter. We'll leave Friday morning. I looked up. For what? Jacob's move. He scrolled down. Eric's driving separately, but we can take my car. I watched him add something to the calendar. We. No question. No invitation. Just a place already assigned to me. And for the first time since Peter kissed me in that parking lot, I felt the old uncertainty return, in a completely new form. Peter must have seen something in my face because he stopped scrolling. What? I looked at the calendar. Did Jacob ask me to come? Peter frowned. I assumed you wanted to. That wasn't my question. The words landed between us with enough familiarity that Peter's expression changed immediately. He set his phone down. No, he didn't ask. Did you? I just did. You told me when we were leaving. Peter leaned back against the counter. You're my boyfriend. I'm aware. I thought this was the kind of thing boyfriends did. There was nothing unreasonable about that sentence. That was the problem. I could have gone. I probably would have enjoyed parts of it. Jacob was moving into a dorm 3 hours away. There would be boxes, bad parking, furniture assembled by people who had never read instructions, and Peter pretending he wasn't having an emotion while alphabetizing extension cords. Being there would have made sense. So why did I feel that familiar pressure in my chest? I need to think about it, I said. Peter looked genuinely confused. Okay, not offended, not defensive, just confused, which somehow made it harder. The subject disappeared when Jacob came home, 20 minutes later, carrying 2 bags of takeout, despite the fact that we were already eating. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. Oh. Peter looked at the bags. What did you buy? Food. We have food. I can see that. Then why did you buy food? Because I thought you'd be alone. Jacob looked at me. Not that I'm disappointed. Thank you. He put the bags in the refrigerator, then noticed Peter's phone on the counter. You doing the move schedule? Yes, Jacob groaned. Dad, it's a 4-hour window. We need a plan. We need boxes and a car. And a plan. Jacob opened the refrigerator again. Then he said, without looking at either of us, "Actually, about Friday." Peter straightened. "What?" Jacob closed the door. "Can it just be you and Dad?" The room went still. Peter blinked. "You mean Eric?" "Yes. The other dad. I know who you meant." I figured. Peter glanced at me. I saw the exact moment he tried to understand whether I was hurt. I wasn't. Not even slightly. Jacob leaned against the refrigerator. "It's not about Andrew." "Good to know," I said. "It's just—" He stopped. For once, the teenager who could argue for 20 minutes about curfew seemed unable to find a sentence. I waited. Peter did not. "You don't want Andrew there?" "Peter." He looked at me. "Let him finish." Jacob exhaled. "It's the last thing." Peter's face changed. Jacob looked between his fathers as if Eric were somehow also present in the kitchen. "The last thing, that's us." Nobody spoke. "Graduation had everybody," Jacob continued. "Grandparents, cousins, Andrew, people I barely knew. Which was fine, but this is me leaving home." His voice became quieter. "I want it to be the three of us." Peter's jaw tightened. Not in anger. Something closer to grief. I said, "That makes sense." Peter looked at me again. I held his gaze. "It does." Jacob's shoulders lowered. "Thanks. You didn't need my permission." "I know." He turned back to Peter. Peter took a little longer. Then he nodded. "Okay." Jacob smiled. "Okay. That should have been the end of it." Instead, after Jacob went upstairs, Peter stood at the counter staring at nothing. I waited. Finally, he said, "I thought you'd be there." "I know. I wanted you there." "I know that too." He looked at me. "You really aren't bothered?" "No. Not at all?" "Peter, his parents are taking him to college. I don't need to be included in every family moment to prove something." His expression tightened. "I didn't say you did." "No, I did." The sentence came out sharper than I intended. Peter heard it. "What does that mean?" I looked away. "Nothing." He gave me a flat stare. "Andrew." I almost laughed. There it was again. The moment where I could tell the truth, or wait for him to excavate it. "I think I've been uneasy for a few days." "A few days?" "Yes." "And you're telling me now?" "I'm telling you when I understood it. That isn't the same thing." "No." Peter crossed his arms. "What are you uneasy about?" I searched for the cleanest answer. That was probably already a mistake. "I like being part of your life. I know. I like Jacob. I like Eric. I like your family. But lately, I don't know when I'm your boyfriend and when I'm the third available adult." Peter stared at me. "That's not fair." "Maybe not. I have never treated you like hired help." "I didn't say hired. You're making it sound like every time I ask you to do something, I'm exploiting you." "No. Then what are you saying?" I forced myself not to soften it. "That you've started putting me into plans before asking whether I want to be in them." Peter's expression closed slightly. I kept going. "Dinner becomes dorm shopping. Saturday becomes storage. Tonight you told me when we were leaving for Wisconsin. I thought we were building a life together." "So did I." "Then why does showing up for my family suddenly make you feel trapped?" The word hit wrong. "I'm not trapped. You look like you're halfway out the door, because you keep hearing a boundary as abandonment." Peter went quiet. I regretted the sentence immediately. Not because it was false, because it was true enough to hurt. He looked toward the stairs. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. "Jacob is leaving. I know. My house is going to be empty. I know. I thought having you there when I came back might make that easier." That was the first time he had said it plainly. Not logistics, not boyfriend duty, loneliness. For a moment, every instinct in me leaned toward him. Go Friday. Be at the house when he returns. Bring dinner. Stay the night. Make the transition gentler. That was what love did, wasn't it? Showed up. Then I realized Peter had not asked. Not really. He had assigned me the ending of his difficult day, because my presence solved a problem he had not yet lived through. I said carefully, "I don't think I should be there when you get back." His face went still. "Why?" "Because I think you need to know what coming home feels like before you decide what you need from me." Peter looked stunned. "That sounds clinical. It feels terrible." "Good." I flinched. He immediately looked ashamed. "Sorry. No. You're allowed to hate it." He rubbed both hands over his face. "I don't understand why needing you is suddenly a problem." "It isn't. That's exactly what you're saying." "No. I'm saying I don't want to be automatically placed wherever something hurts. Peter dropped his hands. And what am I supposed to do? Submit a request every time I want my boyfriend with me? No. Then where is the line? I don't know. He stared at me. For once, that answer seemed to matter. I genuinely don't know, I repeated. But I know this version isn't working. Peter's eyes narrowed slightly. This version. Yes. You mean the version where I assumed my boyfriend would come with me when my son moved out. The version where I spent days feeling uncomfortable and waiting for you to notice. Peter went quiet. I realized too late that he had heard what I had not meant to confess. He stepped closer. How long? What? How long have you been bothered by this? I looked away. Andrew. Maybe a week. His laugh contained no humor. And you said nothing. I was trying to figure out whether I was overreacting. No, you were testing me. I looked at him. Peter's voice remained controlled, which somehow made it worse. You wanted me to notice. I opened my mouth. Nothing came. You wanted me to ask exactly the right question, without you having to say you were unhappy. That's not. It is. He shook his head. You told me I shouldn't assume what you want. Fine, you're right. But you don't get to punish me for failing a test you never told me I was taking. The sentence landed cleanly. I hated it, because he was right. Not completely, but enough. I'm not trying to punish you. I know. He looked exhausted now. That might be the problem. Neither of us thinks we're doing anything wrong, until the other one is bleeding from it. We stood in Peter's kitchen, 3 feet apart, both holding truths that did not cancel each other. Finally, I said, take Jacob to college. Peter looked at me. Go with Eric, be his dad, come home. His eyes dropped. And then, find out what the empty house actually feels like. He gave me a tired, bitter smile. And if it feels awful, then it feels awful. You really won't come? Every part of me wanted to say I would. Instead I said, not that night. Peter looked toward the stairs again, then back at me. Okay. No dramatic breakup, no accusation, no promise that everything was fine. Just one word, and the knowledge that Friday now belonged to Peter, in a way neither of us could control. When I left his house that night, he did not follow me outside. And 3 days later, Peter drove his son to college without me. By Sunday evening, 3 things had happened. Jacob was officially living in Wisconsin. Peter had not called me for rescue, and I had discovered that silence was much easier to recommend when I wasn't the one sitting inside it. I knew Peter and Eric had left Minneapolis before 7 Friday morning, because Jacob sent me a photograph of Peter standing beside the car with a travel mug, looking like a man who had already identified 12 possible traffic delays. The caption said, he made an itinerary. I replied, of course he did. Jacob sent another message. Eric threw it away. Then, best day of my life. I laughed alone in my apartment. That was the last update I got for 6 hours. I had told Peter I wouldn't be there. Apparently, some part of me had expected him to make that decision difficult. A call from a gas station. A message asking whether I was sure. Some minor emergency I could solve without technically breaking the boundary. Nothing came. At noon, I cleaned my kitchen. At 1, I went grocery shopping. At 2, I started reorganizing a training proposal that did not need reorganizing. At 3:30, I realized I had checked my phone 17 times. That annoyed me enough to put it in a drawer. It stayed there for 11 minutes. When I took it out again, there was a message from Jacob. Done. Underneath was a picture of a dorm room containing too many boxes, one unmade bed, and Eric sitting in a desk chair while Peter stood near the window. Peter wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at Jacob. Even in a photograph, I recognized the expression. Pride, love, and the beginning of loss. I typed 3 different responses, deleted all of them. Finally, looks good. Congratulations, college man. Jacob answered with a thumbs up. No message from Peter. That night, I made pasta for one and hated how symbolic it felt. I turned on a movie, turned it off, called my sister. She answered on the 3rd ring. Someone dead? No. Hospital? No. Then this is emotional. I closed my eyes. Why are those the categories? Because you hate the telephone. I call you. You text me articles and then consider it sibling intimacy. That counts. It doesn't. I smiled despite myself. My sister lived in Denver with her wife and had known me long enough to identify my evasions before I finished constructing them. "So," she said, "what happened?" I gave her the short version. She listened without interrupting, which meant she was saving something unpleasant. When I finished, she said, "You told him not to call." "I told him not to use me to avoid being alone." "Right. And now he's alone." "Yes. And he hasn't called." "Yes." I waited. She waited longer. "That's the part where you say something useful. I'm enjoying this. You're terrible." "Andrew, what exactly did you want him to do?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She continued. "You wanted him to respect the boundary." "Yes. He respected it." "Yes. And now you're upset that he respected it, without making you feel irresistible first. That is an aggressive interpretation." "Is it wrong?" I leaned back against the sofa. "No." "Interesting. I hate you." "Also interesting." I looked at the dark television screen. I think I wanted him to prove I mattered, while also proving he could manage without me. That sounds exhausting. It sounded reasonable in my head. Most impossible standards do. I rubbed my face. My sister's voice softened. "You were right to say something." "I know. And he was right about you testing him." "I know. That must be deeply irritating." "You have no idea." "Oh, I do." We talked for another 20 minutes. Not about Peter. That helped more than I expected. Saturday morning, I woke to no messages. I went running. At 11, Peter sent an email to our department about Monday's budget review. Completely normal. Professionally perfect. I read it 3 times looking for emotional subtext in a spreadsheet attachment. That was when I understood I had become ridiculous. I spent years telling myself I wanted directness. Then, when Peter actually gave me space, I started analyzing silence the same way I had analyzed his invitations. My defense had changed clothes. That was all. Before, I waited for people to choose me without asking. Now I was waiting for Peter to respect me in exactly the right way, without telling him what respect looked like. I had confused not mind-reading Peter with requiring Peter to mind-read me. The realization was not elegant. It mostly made me swear at my coffee. Saturday afternoon, Jacob called. Actually called. That worried me. "You okay?" "Yeah." "Do you need money?" "No." "Did you break something?" "No." "Then why are you calling?" "I can call people." "You're 18. "Exactly." I heard voices behind him. "Where are you?" "Dining hall." "Already making friends?" "I'm standing with 3 people whose names I may have forgotten." Someone shouted something in the background. Jacob laughed. He sounded good. That mattered. "How's your dad?" I asked before I could stop myself. There was a pause. "Which one?" "Very funny." "Dad's fine." "Peter?" "Yeah." Another pause. Then Jacob said, "He was weird when they left." "What kind of weird?" "Normal weird. Quiet." I said nothing. "He didn't make me promise to call every day. That is growth. He only said 4 times a week. Incremental growth." Jacob laughed. Then his voice changed slightly. "You guys okay?" I stared at the floor. "You do not need to manage us." "I know." "Seriously." "I know." I heard the distinction. He wasn't asking because he thought our relationship was his responsibility. He was asking because he cared. "We're figuring something out," I said. "Okay. And you don't need to fix it." I wasn't going to. "Good. I have chemistry at 8 in the morning Monday. I have real problems now." "That's terrible." "I know." When we hung up, I realized something else. Jacob had just done exactly what Peter and I kept failing to do. He asked. He listened. He didn't decide what my answer should be. Sunday passed slowly. I went to the farmer's market, did laundry, finished the training proposal. At 4, I almost texted Peter. "How's the house?" I deleted it. Then typed, "How are you?" Deleted that too. Not because asking was wrong, because I knew why I was asking. I wanted reassurance. I wanted him to tell me he missed me. I wanted proof that the empty house had not taught him he preferred being alone. That wasn't concern. It was fear wearing concern's jacket. So I stopped. Monday at work. Peter was in the conference room before me. Of course he was. He looked tired, not wrecked, not transformed, just tired. "Morning," he said. "Morning." For 40 minutes, we reviewed budgets with 6 other people. Peter challenged a number in my projections. He was right. I resented him for approximately 12 seconds. When the meeting ended, people filtered out. I gathered my notes slowly. Peter did the same. For one strange moment, we were alone, in the exact hallway-side conference room where I had first asked whether I was helping or coming. He looked at me. "How are you?" The question was simple. No hidden task. "I'm okay." He nodded. "You?" "I'm okay." Neither of us pretended that was the entire answer, but neither forced the conversation either. "Jacob likes the dorm," Peter said. "He called me." "I know." "You know?" "He mentioned it." "What else does he report?" "Mostly violations of my dignity." "That seems healthy." Peter smiled. It was small. Then someone entered the conference room, looking for a cable, and the moment closed. Peter did not ask me to dinner. I did not ask what happened when he got home. We went back to work. That night, I understood for the first time that distance did not feel dramatic when two adults respected it. It felt ordinary. That was harder. No villain, no betrayal, no single moment to forgive. Just the question of whether two people could change patterns they had spent years mistaking for personality. Tuesday passed, then Wednesday. Peter and I exchanged work messages. Nothing personal. By Thursday, I missed him enough that I stopped pretending I didn't. I also knew missing him was not an emergency. That was new. At 6:30 that evening, my phone lit up. "Peter, are you home tonight?" My heart immediately supplied 15 possible meanings. I refused all of them. "Yes." His reply came less than a minute later. "Can I come over?" "Yes." 25 minutes later, someone knocked. Peter stood outside my apartment in dark jeans and a blue shirt. No jacket despite the cool evening. No takeout. No paperwork. Nothing in his hands. I opened the door wider. "Come in." He stepped inside. I closed the door. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. Then, because apparently some habits took longer to kill than others, I asked, "What happened?" Peter shook his head. "Nothing." I waited. His eyes stayed on mine. "I don't need help." I think that was when I understood why Peter had come. Not because Jacob had called from Wisconsin with a crisis. Not because the house had broken. Not because work had gone wrong. Not because Peter had discovered some practical problem that required the exact combination of skills I happened to possess. Nothing had happened, and he had still chosen my door. I stepped aside. Peter walked farther into the apartment, but didn't sit. Neither did I. "How was it?" I asked. He knew what I meant. "The house?" "Yes." Peter considered the question. "Quiet." "That bad?" "No." That surprised me. He looked toward the windows. "The first night was awful." I waited. I kept hearing things that weren't happening. Jacob coming downstairs. His bedroom door. The refrigerator opening at midnight because apparently he believed cheese was a separate food group. That sounds medically concerning. It probably was. Peter smiled briefly. "Saturday morning I made coffee for 2 people." My chest tightened. He noticed. I poured the second cup out. "That sounds depressing." It was. Then he added, "And useful." I frowned. Peter finally sat on the arm of my sofa. I think I've spent years making sure nobody around me has to feel the full impact of anything. Eric might disagree. He already has. "You talked to him?" "On the drive back." Of course he had. Peter rubbed his palms together. "He said that when we were married, I used to solve emotions before anyone admitted having them. That sounds like Eric." He said it less politely. "That also sounds like Eric." Peter looked at me. He said I'm good at anticipating what people need, which is useful until I start believing anticipation gives me permission. I stayed quiet. "I did that with you." "Yes. I invited you into everything because I wanted you there." That mattered. I let him continue. "But somewhere between wanting you there and being afraid you might not stay, I stopped asking." His voice dropped. I turned inclusion into insurance. The sentence hit me harder than I expected. Peter looked down at his hands. When Jacob asked for the move to be just us, I was hurt. "I know. Not because he didn't want you there." He took a breath. "Because it reminded me there are parts of his life that will keep moving away from me. And I think I decided, without ever saying it, that if you were attached to every part of mine, I wouldn't have to feel that as much." There was no excuse inside the explanation. That was what made it different. I sat across from him. "I don't mind being needed." Peter looked up. "I know that now." "No. I mean I actually like it sometimes." "I definitely know that." I gave him a look. He almost smiled. "I think I overcorrected," I said. "How?" "I spent so long being useful, because I was afraid usefulness was the only reason anyone kept me around. that I started treating every need like evidence against love. Peter said nothing. I don't want a relationship where nobody depends on anybody. That sounds terrible. It does. I just want to know I can say no to something without making the whole relationship feel less secure. Peter nodded. You can. The answer came quickly. I raised an eyebrow. He caught himself. Sorry. What? That was me answering before asking. I smiled. Progress. Peter took a breath. What does partnership look like to you? There it was. Not a guess. Not an assignment. A question. I had spent years waiting for people to know my answers without being told. Now that someone was asking, I discovered answering was its own kind of exposure. I want to be included, I said. Peter listened. But not automatically. He nodded. I want Jacob to call me if he wants advice. I want your mother to keep insulting my pie crust. I want to have dinner with Eric without wondering whether that's somehow strange. It is strange. Your family is strange. Fair. I want to help when you need help. I paused. And sometimes I want you to ask me to come over when absolutely nothing is wrong. Peter's expression softened. Like tonight. Like tonight. He looked down. I almost brought dinner. Why didn't you? Because I realized food would give me something to do. That made me laugh. Peter smiled. I wanted to arrive with no excuse. You succeeded. I was very uncomfortable in the elevator. Good. Apparently discomfort is our preferred growth strategy. It has a strong track record. Silence settled between us. Not awkward. Not solved either. Peter looked at me carefully. Do you still want to be with me? The question was so direct that my old instinct searched for complication. There wasn't one. Yes. His shoulders lowered slightly. But. No but. He blinked. I stood and moved closer. I'm allowed to answer simply. I'm learning. So am I. Peter stood. We were close enough now that I could see the tiredness around his eyes. I touched his hand, not to reassure him that everything was fixed, just because I wanted to. He turned his palm and held mine. I still want a life with you in it, he said, but I want to learn how to ask where you want to stand. I felt the sentence settle somewhere deep. A month earlier, I might have heard only the reassurance. Now, I heard the responsibility inside it too. I want that. Peter's thumb moved once against my hand. And if I start assigning you again, I'll tell you before I become silently furious. That would be helpful. I make no promises about tone. I can survive tone, and if I start expecting you to read my mind, I'll fail spectacularly. That may be the correct treatment. He smiled. Then he leaned closer. He paused, not ceremonially, not asking a question we had already answered, just giving me room to meet him. I did. The kiss felt different from the one in the parking lot. That first kiss had answered whether we wanted each other. This one answered something harder. We could still want each other after discovering wanting was not enough. 3 weeks later, Peter called me on a Thursday afternoon. Not texted, called. I answered from my office. Someone dead? He laughed. You've been talking to your sister. She's influential. Jacob is coming home next weekend. I heard. My parents are doing dinner Sunday. Okay. Peter paused. I smiled before he even asked. Would you like to come? I looked at my calendar. Sunday was free. More importantly, I actually wanted to go. Yes. Good. Another pause. Then he said, and afterward? What about afterward? What do you want to do? I leaned back in my chair. No task waited behind the question. No family requirement. No graduation. No dorm. No empty house that needed softening. Just Peter, asking me what I wanted. I thought about it. There's a new place by the river. The one with the impossible reservation system. Yes. You criticized the menu for 15 minutes. I was interested. That is not how interest sounds when you do it. Dinner there. Okay. And then my place. Peter was quiet for exactly half a second. That sounds good. It does. When Sunday came, I went to family dinner because I wanted to. I helped Peter's mother carry one bowl because she asked. I refused to fix Paul's phone because I did not want to. Jacob told 3 college stories, 2 of which were clearly edited for parental consumption. Eric caught my eye across the table when Peter asked whether I wanted another glass of wine instead of simply pouring it. He smiled. I smiled back. Nobody announced the improvement. Nobody needed to. Later, when Peter and I left together, he reached the sidewalk and stopped. River? I looked at him. He waited. It was such a small thing, A question, a choice, room for an answer. Yes, I said. Then I took his hand, not because anyone was watching, not because I needed proof, because I wanted to. And Peter came with me because I had asked.